It's 1597, and respected botanist John Gerard publishes a warning that will haunt Europe for centuries. The whole plant is of a rank and stinking savor, he writes about tomatoes, claiming they cause madness and death. But Gerard got it catastrophically wrong. The tomato wasn't the killer lurking in European homes. Something else was silently claiming victims. And today, hidden threats just as dangerous are destroying tomato plants in gardens everywhere. I'm about to expose the real culprit behind those historical deaths and show you how understanding this ancient mystery holds the key to protecting your harvest from the modern enemies that still plague tomato growers. The truth lies not in chemistry, but in appearance. When European botanists first encountered tomatoes in the 16th century, they saw something terrifyingly familiar. The bright red fruit bore an uncanny resemblance to the deadly berries of belladonna, also known as deadly nightshade. Both fruits shared the same glossy, tempting appearance. Both belong to the nightshade family, Solanaceae, a botanical group already notorious for harboring some of nature's most potent poisons. To herbalists and physicians of the era, the visual similarity seemed like nature's warning system in action. John Gerard and his contemporaries operated on a simple principle. If it looks like poison, it probably is poison. The tomato's classification as a nightshade sealed its fate. Deadly nightshade had claimed countless lives throughout history, and here was a fruit that looked remarkably similar, growing on plants with the same family characteristics. The fear spread through botanical circles and into popular culture. Respected physicians documented case after case of suspected tomato poisoning, though they were likely observing coincidental illnesses or misattributing symptoms to the wrong cause. The pattern seemed undeniable to observers who lacked modern understanding of plant chemistry and toxicology. This botanical guilt by association created an ironclad case against tomatoes. Every illness that occurred after eating the suspicious red fruit became evidence of its deadly nature. The wealthy, who had access to exotic New World foods and could afford to experiment with unfamiliar ingredients, reported the most cases simply because they were the ones consuming tomatoes most frequently. The visual similarity extended beyond the fruit itself. Tomato plants shared structural characteristics with their poisonous relatives. The leaves, stems, and flowers all bore family resemblances that reinforced suspicion. To untrained eyes, the entire plant seemed designed to deceive and destroy. Meanwhile, in regions where tomatoes had been consumed safely for generations, local populations understood the difference between the edible fruit and its dangerous cousins. But this knowledge took centuries to reach European tables, where fear had already taken root in medical texts and popular wisdom. The misidentification reveals a fundamental problem that continues to plague gardeners today. Just as those European botanists mistook beneficial plants for harmful ones based on superficial similarities, modern gardeners regularly misidentify the real threats to their crops. The same pattern of misattribution that condemned tomatoes for centuries now operates in gardens worldwide. Gardeners observe problems in their plants and immediately blame the most obvious suspects, missing the true culprits that work silently beneath the surface. The deadly nightshade comparison teaches us that appearances deceive. The most dangerous threats to garden health rarely announce themselves with obvious warning signs. Instead, they masquerade as beneficial practices, trusted methods, or essential nutrients. Those European nobles who feared tomatoes were responding to visible similarities while ignoring invisible dangers. They focused on the wrong threat entirely, allowing real hazards to continue unchecked. Modern tomato growers make identical mistakes, fixating on obvious problems while missing the subtle killers that destroy crops from within. The botanical misidentification that terrorized Europe for centuries demonstrates how easily we can be fooled by surface appearances. Today's gardeners face the same challenge, distinguishing between helpful and harmful influences in their growing practices. Understanding this historical lesson becomes crucial when examining modern tomato cultivation. The real threats to today's crops operate with the same deceptive principles that once convinced entire continents to fear a nutritious fruit. These modern dangers hide in plain sight, disguised as the very tools and techniques meant to ensure healthy harvests. The first of these hidden threats strikes breaks through something every gardener considers essential: fertilizer itself. Walk into any garden center and you'll find gardeners loading their carts with high nitrogen fertilizers, believing they're giving their tomato plants the best possible start. These well-meaning gardeners are unknowingly carrying home a substance that will act like slow poison to their plants once flowering begins. Nitrogen serves as both the hero and villain in the tomato growing story. During the early weeks of growth, nitrogen fuels the development of strong stems and lush green leaves. This essential nutrient drives photosynthesis and builds the plant's foundation. But when flowering time arrives, this same life-giving nutrient transforms into a growth hijacker. When tomato plants receive excessive nitrogen during their reproductive phase, the nutrient acts like a chemical override switch. The plant receives constant signals to produce more leaves and stems rather than flowers and fruit. This biological misdirection creates the most frustrating scenario for gardeners: plants that look magnificently healthy but produce virtually no tomatoes. The mechanism operates through the plant's hormonal system. Nitrogen stimulates vegetative growth hormones while suppressing reproductive ones. Each dose of high nitrogen fertilizer during flowering sends the same message to the plant: grow bigger, not reproductive. The plant obediently follows these chemical commands, channeling all its energy into leaf production while ignoring flower development. You'll recognize nitrogen toxicity by its distinctive visual signature. The foliage develops an unnaturally dark green color, almost blue-green in severe cases. This intense coloration indicates an overabundance of chlorophyll production, driven by excess nitrogen. The leaves appear thick and succulent, creating an impression of robust health that masks the underlying problem. These plants produce a ton of leaves and not a ton of tomatoes. But the real damage shows up in the plant's reproductive system. Flowering becomes delayed or stops entirely. When flowers do appear, they often fail to set fruit, dropping off before developing into tomatoes. The plant may reach impressive heights with abundant foliage, while producing only a handful of small, late-season fruits. This modern poisoning mirrors the historical tomato fears perfectly. Just as European botanists trusted their visual assessments to identify dangerous plants, modern gardeners trust expensive, high-nitrogen fertilizers to feed their plants. Both groups believed that their trusted methods guaranteed better results. Both discovered that their assumptions were silently sabotaging their goal. The timing element makes nitrogen toxicity particularly insidious. Early in the season, nitrogen applications produce spectacular results. Seedlings respond with vigorous growth and deep green color. This positive feedback convinces gardeners to continue the same feeding regimen throughout the growing season. They don't realize that the plant's nutritional needs shift dramatically once flowering begins. Most fertilizer labels reinforce this mistake. Products marketed for tomatoes often maintain high nitrogen content throughout their feeding schedule. Gardeners follow these recommendations faithfully, never understanding that the plant's biological priorities have changed. The transition from vegetative growth to reproductive development requires a complete reversal in nutrient emphasis. Professional growers understand this critical timing shift. They use balanced fertilizers during early growth, then switch to formulations like the 3-4-6 ratio found in specialized tomato fertilizers, such as Espoma Organics Tomato Tone, once flowering starts. This nutritional transition supports the plant's changing needs rather than fighting against them. The trap catches even experienced gardeners because nitrogen deficiency and toxicity can look similar in their effects on fruit production. Both conditions result in poor yields, leading confused gardeners to add more fertilizer when they should reduce it. This creates a self-perpetuating cycle where the attempted solution worsens the original problem. Beyond its effects on fruit production, nitrogen toxicity makes plants more susceptible to disease and pest problems. The soft, succulent growth produced by excess nitrogen provides ideal conditions for fungal infections and attracts sap-sucking insects. What appears to be multiple plant problems often traces back to this single nutritional imbalance. But nitrogen represents only the first of 3 silent killers stalking tomato gardens. While gardeners struggle with fertilizer timing, another threat operates with even deadlier efficiency. This fungal assassin strikes with the same deceptive nature that once fooled European botanists. Blight spores exist everywhere around us, floating invisibly through the air like microscopic time bombs. They settle on leaves, stems, and soil surfaces, waiting for the perfect moment to activate. When warm temperatures between 60 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit combine with humidity levels above 90%, these dormant spores spring to life with devastating efficiency. The progression unfolds with terrifying speed. Small brown spots appear on lower leaves, looking innocent enough that many gardeners dismiss them as minor blemishes. Within days, those spots expand into large, dark lesions surrounded by yellow halos. The infection races up the plant, consuming leaf after leaf until entire branches wilt and blacken. But blight doesn't stop at the foliage. The disease attacks stems, creating dark, sunken cankers that girdle the plant and cut off nutrient flow. Fruits develop dark, leathery patches that render them inedible. What started as a few brown spots becomes total plant collapse in less than a week, often striking just as plants begin producing their first flush of mature fruits. Poor air circulation creates the perfect breeding ground for this killer. When gardeners plant tomatoes too close together, they unknowingly trap moisture around the leaves. This humid microclimate becomes a paradise for blight spores. Each water droplet that lingers on leaf surfaces provides the moisture needed for spore germination and infection. Overcrowded gardens compound the problem exponentially. Dense plantings prevent air movement, keeping foliage wet longer after rain or watering. The trapped humidity creates ideal conditions for rapid spore multiplication. One infected plant can release millions of spores that spread to neighboring plants through air currents and water splash. The disease spreads through gardens with remarkable efficiency. Wind carries spores from infected plants to healthy ones across considerable distances. Rain splash transfers spores from soil to lower leaves, initiating new infection cycle. Contaminated garden tools, clothing, and hands become unwitting carriers that introduce the pathogen to previously clean areas. Those European aristocrats who blamed tomatoes for their illnesses were looking in the wrong direction entirely. While they obsessed over imaginary fruit toxins, real fungal pathogens were likely destroying crops in gardens and fields across Europe. Blight existed then just as it exists now, silently claiming harvests while gardeners searched for explanations in the wrong places. Plant stress from drought, overcrowding, or nutrient imbalances weakens natural defenses and makes infection more likely. The environmental conditions that seem beneficial for tomato growth, warm temperatures and adequate moisture, create the perfect storm for disease development. Gardeners who provide what they believe are ideal growing conditions often unknowingly create blight-friendly environments. Modern varieties offer hope through bred-in disease resistance. The cherry bomb tomato earns its reputation for bomb-proof disease resistance to blight, making it a strategic choice for gardeners who frequently battle this disease. Similarly, the Defiant PHR shows good resistance to various blight strains, proving that selecting resistant cultivars can be a crucial step in safeguarding harvests. The timing of blight attacks makes the disease particularly cruel. Months of careful cultivation and anticipation vanish within days, leaving gardeners with withered plants and rotting tomatoes. This rapid destruction transforms promising harvests into devastating losses, often catching growers completely off guard. Blight stands as one of 3 silent killers that annually destroy millions of tomato harvests worldwide. Its ability to spread rapidly through favorable environmental conditions makes it a formidable agricultural challenge that demands respect and strategic planning. Yet even plants that survive nitrogen toxicity and blight face another hidden threat that operates where most gardeners never think to look. The third killer operates beneath the soil surface, slowly strangling plants where you can't see the damage until wilting leaves and stunted growth announce the crisis above ground. This underground assassin attacks the very foundation of plant health through poor root development and shallow planting practices that plague most tomato gardens. Poor root systems create a triple threat that leaves plants defenseless against drought, disease, and nutrient deficiency. When roots remain shallow and underdeveloped, they cannot access the deep moisture reserves that sustain plants during dry spells. These weakened root networks also fail to establish the strong anchoring systems necessary for supporting heavy fruit loads or withstanding wind stress. The underground battle unfolds in ways most gardeners never witness. Shallow roots concentrate in the top few inches of soil, where they compete fiercely for limited resources in a crowded, depleted zone. They cannot penetrate deeper soil layers where moisture persists longer and nutrients remain more stable. This surface-level existence leaves plants constantly vulnerable to environmental fluctuations. Stressed plants with compromised root systems become magnets for every pest and disease in the garden. Their weakened state signals vulnerability to insects that target struggling plants. Fungal pathogens exploit the reduced vigor that comes from poor nutrient uptake and water stress. The cascade of problems begins below ground, but manifests as a constellation of symptoms that confuse gardeners searching for solutions. Modern gardeners similarly focus on visible plant problems, leaf diseases, pest damage, and fruit disorders, while the true foundation failure remains hidden beneath the soil surface. Those European aristocrats focus their fears on the visible fruit while missing the real threats entirely. Tomatoes possess a remarkable secret superpower that most gardeners never unlock. These plants develop adventitious roots from nodes along their stems, a natural adaptation that can dramatically expand their root systems when properly encouraged. This biological capability transforms weak, surface-rooted plants into robust, deeply anchored specimens. When tomato seedlings are planted deep, burying 1/3 to 2/3 of the stem length, the buried nodes respond by generating new root systems. These adventitious roots emerge from the stem and spread throughout the soil, creating a vast network that can access water and nutrients far more effectively than conventional shallow plantings. However, soil temperature must reach at least 55 degrees Fahrenheit consistently, ideally 60 degrees, before attempting deep planting to ensure proper root development. For gardeners in colder climates who cannot plant deep due to soil temperature constraints, horizontal planting offers an alternative approach. This method allows the stem to develop adventitious roots while keeping the plant closer to the warmer soil surface. The deep planting technique stimulates root development at multiple points along the buried stem. Each node becomes a potential root generation site, multiplying the plant's absorptive capacity. This expanded root system provides superior anchorage while dramatically increasing the plant's ability to seek out water and nutrients from deeper soil layers. But root suffocation syndrome compounds the effects of the other two silent killers. Plants with shallow, stressed root systems become more susceptible to nitrogen toxicity because their limited root networks cannot efficiently process excess nutrients. The poor root health also increases vulnerability to blight and other diseases by weakening the plant's natural defense mechanisms. The timing connection proves equally devastating. Just as blight strikes when plants should be producing fruit, root problems manifest most severely when plants need maximum support for heavy fruit production. The underground crisis sabotages the plant's ability to sustain itself during its most demanding growth phase. The visual signs of root suffocation often mislead gardeners into treating symptoms rather than the underlying cause. Wilting plants receive more water, which can worsen soil conditions. Yellowing leaves trigger fertilizer applications that stressed roots cannot properly utilize. Each attempted solution fails because it addresses surface symptoms while ignoring the underground crisis. Root suffocation stands as the third silent killer, making plants vulnerable to all other garden threats. This hidden foundation failure operates with the same deceptive nature that once convinced entire continents to fear nutritious tomatoes while missing the real dangers entirely. But just as those historical fears were based on misunderstanding, modern gardening failures often result from overlooking solutions that have existed for generations. One such solution lies buried in agricultural practices that predate modern synthetic fertilizers, by centuries. Bone meal represents a foundational approach that addresses multiple plant health challenges through natural soil enhancement rather than quick fixes. This organic amendment provides a valuable component in building resilient tomato plants, though it works best as part of a comprehensive soil strategy rather than a standalone miracle cure. Created from ground animal bone, bone meal delivers phosphorus for root development, calcium for cellular strength, and slow-release nutrition that supports balanced plant growth. The phosphorus content serves as a catalyst for adventitious root formation when tomatoes are planted deep. This essential nutrient stimulates buried stem nodes to generate new root systems along the stem length. When phosphorus contacts these nodes, it activates dormant root primordia, specialized cells that develop into functional roots. These adventitious roots emerge at multiple points, creating an expanded network that accesses water and nutrients from deeper soil layers. The calcium component strengthens plant structure at the cellular level. This mineral fortifies cell walls, creating barriers that resist disease penetration while supporting heavy fruit loads. Strong cell walls provide natural armor against blight spores and other pathogens that exploit weak plant tissues. The calcium also prevents blossom end rot, a physiological disorder that creates dark, sunken spots on tomato bottoms. Beyond structural benefits, calcium enhances the plant's natural defense systems. Plants with adequate calcium levels produce stronger barriers against fungal infections and show improved resistance to environmental stress. The mineral supports enzyme systems that help plants recognize and respond to pathogen attacks before infections become established. Bone meal's slow-release nature helps prevent the nitrogen imbalances that can hijack plant reproduction. Unlike synthetic fertilizers that deliver massive nutrient loads immediately, bone meal releases nutrients gradually over months. This steady supply supports balanced plant metabolism without triggering the excessive vegetative growth that prevents flowering. The gradual nutrient release aligns with changing plant needs throughout the growing season. Early growth receives adequate nutrition without excess, while reproductive phases get sustained feeding that supports fruit development. This natural timing helps avoid the boom and bust cycles created by conventional fertilizer applications. However, bone meal works most effectively when combined with balanced fertilizers rather than used alone. Professional growers often pair bone meal with complete fertilizers that provide the full spectrum of nutrients plants need. This combination approach ensures comprehensive nutrition while leveraging bone meal's specific strengths in phosphorus and calcium delivery. The practical application involves incorporating bone meal into soil before planting and during the growing season as needed. When establishing new beds, mixing bone meal into the planting area provides a foundation of slow-release nutrients. Additional applications during the season can support continued root development and fruit production. This soil-based approach addresses plant health at the foundational level rather than treating surface symptoms. Strong root systems developed with adequate phosphorus can better resist drought stress and nutrient deficiencies. Robust cellular structure built with sufficient calcium provides natural disease resistance and fruit quality. The effectiveness comes from working with natural plant biology rather than against it. Plants evolved to extract nutrients gradually from organic matter in soil, not to process large doses of synthetic chemicals. Bone meal mimics these natural processes while providing concentrated nutrition where plants need it most. This foundational approach reveals an important principle about successful gardening. The most effective solutions often address underlying systems rather than obvious symptoms. Just as those historical tomato fears focused on the wrong threats entirely, modern garden problems frequently require looking beneath the surface to find their true causes. Understanding these root causes transforms how we approach tomato cultivation. The forbidden fruit was never the real threat. The danger always lay in what we didn't understand about the hidden systems at work beneath the surface. Look beyond the obvious in your own garden. Question what silent killers might be lurking where you can't see them. That expensive fertilizer could be poisoning your plants. Those crowded beds might be breeding disease. Your Your shallow planting may be strangling root development. Success comes from selecting resistant varieties like cherry bomb, timing fertilizer applications to match plant development stages, and using deep planting techniques that encourage robust root systems. These targeted strategies work with plant biology rather than against it, addressing the true foundations of healthy tomato production.